people have seen that book at least. It was a wonderful book, which is just like a notes in one-liner, which you can easily remember if you go through that. So I wanted to prepare something like that and present it so that during exam times you can go through that rapidly without having a bulky textbook in your hand and trying to read that. With that idea, I am now sharing the PPT. Are you able to see that? Are you all able to see that PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. So I will make it full screen. So CKD is a progressive, that is the definition is either a GFR less than 60 ml per minute of 1.73 square meter. This is an average taken with over the population. So sometimes if the examiner asks you what is that this thing, this is a study which is done with the population across the globe, and that is the body surface area for which you have to produce at least 60 ml. It is less than that for 3 months, irrespective of the cause, or kidney damage leading to a decrease in GFR present for 3 months or more. So it can happen with kidney damage and without kidney damage. That is the idea or the definition for that. And if there is a damage, it will be manifested as abnormalities in the composition of blood or urine, changes in radiological imaging or USG, and histology of the kidney will be changed. When you take a biopsy, especially if a patient is suffering from IgA immunopathy or immunoglobulin deficiency or reaction, he will get the histology will be indicated. But nowadays, very rarely we do a kidney biopsy for this patient. These are the various stages which all of you will be aware of. Stage 1, 2, and sometimes stage 3 is divided into A and B also based on the GFR value. Now, what are the etiologies commonly seen? Diabetic nephropathy, hypertensive, glomerulonephritis, renovascular diseases, polycystic kidney, reflex nephropathy, and HIV assisted, and so on. And there are two things which you have to remember. One is a measured GFR, which is done by creatinine clearance or creatinine EDTA, TCP, all these things, where you have to check the plasma level, collect the urine for 24 hours, and there is a short form of creatinine clearance done for 3 hours. Instead of waiting for 24 hours, you collect the urine for 3 hours, and you can compare it with the urine volume and urine creatinine divided by plasma volume. Creatinine level will be the measured way of assessing the GFR, and this Cockcroft Gault is only a estimation based on only creatinine. It is a formula based, and nowadays we have another formula called MDRD study equation, where you take the age and creatinine and difference in the various populations are there according to that. We need not worry about that. Then what are the adaptations? GFR impairment will not be reflected in urea and creatinine value till very late. This is a very, very important point you have to remember. Until 75% of the nephron activity is gone, creatinine will not raise. Urea may be slightly raising. So urea, creatinine are not the best of indicators. When they are raised, you can be 100% sure that there is a severe damage to the kidney. Potassium levels are also maintained till GFR reduces to 10%. And mechanism is by increase in the aldosterone, which will eliminate the potassium and greater loss from GI tract. And so maintenance of sodium levels and dependent fluid status also is adapted. That is what has happened in the second case scenario, where patient has not got any edema despite of the kidney problem. So the complications of CKD, I remember it by the mnemonic. I have said at the last meeting itself, I am a man for mnemonics. So the chief game is the mnemonic I remember. C stands for serious, where hypertension, left ventricular hypertrophy due to saltwater retention, and cardiomyopathy, accelerated atherosclerosis. These are all the points that you have to remember in cardiovascular system. Hematology and hemostasis. Patient may have anemia and may have coagulopathy, which may be in the form of either a bleeding or a thrombosis. And immune system is suppressed because of uremia and the drugs that they are given. And so they may catch any infection very rapidly. That is the reason why you have to be very, very careful with aseptic techniques. electrolyte changes, they can develop hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, and hypermagnesemia, and hypocalcemia. So the supplemental calcium is given in these patients to bind the phosphate, not to replace the calcium, so that automatically the secondary hyperparathyroidism which happens will be corrected. So patients receive calcium tablets regularly to correct that. Fluid imbalance may be either in the form of overload or dehydration. So if the patient's urine output is low and if they have frequent features of overloading, then the patients are advised to restrict their fluid intake to 750 ml to 1 liter per day, and salt restriction is also advised. And gastrointestinal system, there may be delayed emptying, nausea, anorexia, which causes nutritional depletion, and folic and iron acids are they're not taken, which may contribute to anemia. Acidosis and autonomic neuropathy are the other two problems that can happen. In acidosis, bone resorption happens, and the postural hypotension can be the problem with autonomic neuropathy. Musculoskeletal system, osteodystrophy and rhabdomyolysis are the two problems. And the endocrine system, hyperparathyroidism, vitamin deficiency, and in diabetes mellitus patient, you will have prolongation of insulin action because the insulin is eliminated mainly by the kidney. And in addition to that, renin is also another hormone, which is a endocrine function that you have to remember. In history taking, patients usually complain of gradual decrease in urine output, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, recent onset hypertension, may be suffering from uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, swelling of the eyelids in the morning and pedal edema later on, breathlessness on exertion, bleeding episodes, insomnia, irritability in the central nervous system. Pruritus is a very, very important sign. Patients may be having scratching because of uremic deposition. Any problems with supposing they have been already started on renal replacement therapy, you have to ask about any hypotension happening during the start or the maintenance of renal replacement therapy, especially hemodialysis. Continuing with that, ask for the duration and severity of comorbidities like hypertension, neurological problem. Then, if the patient is already on RRT, find out indications. Why they were started on RRT, that history is very, very important. Whether it was started as an emergency, as I gave the case scenario in the earlier case, or whether it was planned as an elective after creating an AV fistula. So, how it is initiated, whether any instability has occurred during that. So, there is a syndrome called dialysis inequilibrium syndrome, which can occur in the initial phases, which is very, very important. And how frequently they are dialyzed, what is the weight gain? That's a very important point you have to ask in the history of CKD patients. Pre-dialysis weight and post-dialysis weight. The difference between the two is the weight gain. So any pulmonary edema due to skipping of dialysis, and quantity of native urine, and or whether any restriction on fluid has been advocated to this patient. So patients who have a normal native urine, you have the liberty of infusing normal quantity of IV fluids in them. That is one big advantage in these patients. When you examine for all the edema in all these places, anemia, scratch marks, vitals to be examined, and systemic examination, see for the congestive heart failure, heart size in pericarditis and myopathy. So X-ray chest will reveal that, we will see that later. Lung, look for lung signs and fluid excess or pleural effusion. Abdomen, there may be a renal swelling in polycystic kidneys. There may be a big mass. Enlarged bladder in chronically enlarged prostate, and free fluid may be there. Central nervous system, sensation and motor examination for neuropathy is to be done. AV fistula site, functional status by palpating for the thrill, presence of local gigantism. Then investigation, CBC you have to do for anemia, infection and platelet function, very, very important. Renal function test, urea creatinine, urine microscope culture and sensitivity, and also urine analysis for specific gravity and osmolality, that also to be included. X-ray chest to rule out pericarditis, myopathy, fluid collection in the lungs and pleural effusion. EKG, LVH signs, hyperkalemia, silent MI. Echo, cardiac function, size and pulmonary pressures, pericardial fluid. USG abdomen, renal parenchyma, bladder size. Because in some patients who have been on chronic renal replacement therapy, like years of hemodialysis, because of reduced production of urine, the bladder gets shrunken. So bladder size may become very, very small, what is called the thimble bladder. In such patients, if they are willing to undergo transplantation, you may have to enlarge the size of the bladder before you plan for the transplant procedure. Otherwise, the bladder will not have the capacity to hold the urine that is produced in large volume, and the anastomosis may give way and they may have urinary leak. So you have to see the size of the bladder and prostate in the male patients. Now, serum electrolytes, not only sodium and potassium, but also phosphate, magnesium, calcium, and bicarbonate to be assessed. And metabolic acidosis and wide anion gap acidosis is very, very common. So, ABG is a must. So, how do you prepare a patient with surgery? Anemia correction with iron and folic acid. Parenteral iron may be given if they are not able to tolerate oral. And erythropoietin is a very important substitution which has revolutionized the treatment of anemia. So erythropoietin given subcutaneously will improve the erythropoiesis and correct it. But of course, there are side effects or unwanted effects of erythropoietin itself, which you have to read about. Like I'm not, for want of time, I'm not saying that. Control of blood pressure is important. Adjustment of diabetic medications, because as I told you earlier, the insulin production, native insulin production will be better because the elimination is reduced. So diabetic patients may require lesser medication once they develop CKD. And nutrition, protein control should be 0.268 grams only. Otherwise, they will develop more of phosphates and problem. Restrict phosphate also. And renal replacement therapy, emergency dialysis if there is any sign of fluid overload or severe rise in creatinine or cerebral symptoms like cerebral edema, seizures. All these things are indications for emergency IJV catheter hemodialysis. Elective can be done after creating an AV fistula. Peritoneal dialysis in patients, I told you, with congestive cardiac failure or patients who cannot withstand too much of fluid shifts, or patients with bad vessels where AV fistula cannot be created properly, they all will do better with peritoneal dialysis. So in the anesthetic management, you have to have 6 hours of NPO, hemodialysis 24 hours prior to the surgery, serum potassium to continue antihypertensives except AC inhibitors and ARBs. Skip oral hypoglycemic agents and aspiration prophylaxis to be given. You can give anxiolytics orally like alprazolam and immunosuppressive agents also to be given orally. Intraoperatively, avoid all drugs eliminated renally. Change in pharmacodynamics. Sometimes they may ask you, there are two changes happening. One is increase in the volume of distribution. Second is the decrease in protein binding. So both will compensate each other. So more or less, you may have to give the same dosage except for minor adjustments. Induction agents, propofol will be the best choice because of extra hepatic elimination and EC removal. Thiopentone may have a prolonged effect. Etomidate is also a good drug which is not dependent on kidney for elimination. And all those induction agents are given as a single dose, so there is not much of worry. Whereas relaxants, you can use Saxa if the potassium is normal. Atracurium and cisatracurium will be the safe agent, they are not renally dependent for elimination. Analgesics, prefer fentanyl, avoid morphine and pethidine. Inhalation agents, isoflurane. If it is not available, CO also in small, less than 1 mg you can use. Reversal, titrate neostigmine as it is renally dependent. So points to remember, avoid BP cuff on the fistula limb and avoid IV line also there. Fluids, normal dose in patients who have sufficient native urine and not having edema. Restrict in those with negligible output. Avoid potassium containing IV fluids. Avoid too much of normal saline also because it can produce hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. Half normal saline will be a preferred agent in those situations. Beware of hypotension or arrhythmia during clamp release after vascular anastomosis during transplant. Now, types of CKD patients you can encounter in your practice. Moderate CKD, GFR 30 to 60 ml, not on any renal replacement therapy, but conservatively managed, posted for incidental surgery. This is the case scenario I have given for our second friend, Alex Patel. And ESRD patients already on renal replacement therapy in the form of twice or thrice weekly hemodialysis. Again, they may also come for non-renal procedures or renal transplantation, any one of them. We have had patients who had a polycystic kidney, huge mass, which cannot be retained for want of space for the transplant. So we have to first do a nephrectomy in those patients and then later on post them for renal transplantation. So in such patients, we have to be very watchful with the fluid infusion during the period. And of course, there is no fear of acute renal failure. If at all you overload the patient, you have to emergency take them for dialysis immediately after surgery. But all the precautions of renal transplantation you have to follow in patients who are posted for non-renal procedures. Then ESRD patients on peritoneal dialysis may sometimes come for again non-renal or renal transplant procedures. If it is a transplant procedure, you may have to remove the peritoneal dialysis catheter and do the surgery because it is pushing the peritoneum and peritoneally keeping the graft will be difficult. And so what is the important thing you have to do is you have to keep some hemodialysis catheters and facilities should be available, which I will be discussing later. Any of the above type of patients may come for emergency procedures like trauma, acute abdomen, or obstetric emergencies. So all the important points you have to remember in such patients are asepsis, fluid management judiciously, either to overhydrate or underhydrate, and avoid acute kidney failure if there is any partial functioning or moderate degree of CKD. Post-renal transplant patients also may come for complications either immediately or with an incidental surgery later on. So again, that such patients are not very difficult because they will have normal renal function. Again, in them, they will be continuing on immunosuppression. So sepsis is the most important concern there, and maintaining the graft function is the second important concern that you have to keep in mind. So moderate failure with the 30 to 60 ml GFR, not on RRT, conservatively managed, posted for incidental surgery. As I told Dr. Patel, you can admit them for surgery. There is no contraindication. Primary aim is to prevent acute renal failure. Strict asepsis, they are immunocompromised. They may not be on actual immunosuppressive drugs, but they may be immunocompromised. Judicious fluid management to avoid under or overhydration, avoidance of prolonged intra-op hypotension, avoid unnecessary blood transfusions because they may undergo renal transplantation if their condition worsens. If they go from stage 3 to stage 4 and 5, future date they may develop or they may require a renal transplantation. So earlier blood transfusion may interfere with the tissue matching, cross matching. So better to avoid blood transfusion in these patients. Facilities for emergency hemodialysis should be available whenever you take up the patient who are not on any renal replacement therapy if they develop acute renal failure. Regional anesthesia can be safely performed provided you avoid severe hypotension of prolonged nature by adequately giving fluids and vasopressors. ESRD patients already on RRT in the form of twice or thrice weekly hemodialysis, they may come for non-renal procedures or renal transplantation. The anesthesia management is same. Non-renal surgery, ideally they should have a hemodialysis 24 hours prior to surgery. Avoid IV line BP cuff on the AVF limb. I am repeatedly giving this point so that you will all remember not to disturb the AV fistula. Strict asepsis is a must. Check serum potassium before surgery. Don't forget that. Caution needed to use Saxa if it is high. both RA and GA can be safely given. For example, a CKD patient, so urologists want to do a cystoscopy and stenting before they do the procedure or some intervention. You can safely use a regional provided you maintain the blood pressure and fluid status correctly. Judicious fluid administration is the must, and check the functional status of the AV fistula if it is there at the end of all procedures. Don't forget to neglect it. Then the renal transplantation procedure, there are different types of renal transplantation. There is live related donor renal transplantation, what like the case that I have given, mother is willing to donate for son. Live unrelated donor transplantation with the concurrence of authorities. Previously, it was very rampant. We were doing only unrelated, but now with the government concern and legal sanction, we can ask a friend or some distant relative who is emotional, who has an emotional bonding with the donor, can also donate the kidney. Then there is a brain dead patient giving whose heart is still beating. So they are called deceased heart beating donor transplantation. Then there is a deceased non-heart beating. Nowadays, because of the paucity of such heart beating donors, now we have introduced, the Europe has introduced what is called non-heart beating donors, where patients who have given consent earlier that something happens to me, I am ready to donate my organs, or the relatives of the patient know the patient's mind and willing to donate, even after the cardiac arrest has happened, you can take the organs and immediately perform use that organ for transplantation. Then we were insisting on compatible blood, but incompatible blood group, there is what is called a paired exchange. Supposing there is there are two transplant patients waiting, and two donors are available for them, but their blood groups are not matching. But in the opposite side, for example, a patient A has a donor whose blood is not matching, patient B is having a donor whose blood is not matching. But B's donor is willing of the same group for the A. Then they can interchange and have the transplant done. I will show you a picture which will be more clearer for you. And the incompatible blood group from the related donor also we can do after doing what is called plasmapheresis in the recipient. You have to just remove the antibodies so that the antigen antibody reaction does not take place, and you can do it. Started first in Japan and now performed everywhere all over the country also. So in the renal transplant, drive related or unrelated transplant is the first problem, first challenge, where to identify the suitable donor is very important. It should be same blood group, age between 18 and 65 years. If they have comorbidities, it can be controlled hypertension or mild diabetes. Previously, these were all rejected. Now we are accepting with normal renal function. So you have to thoroughly evaluate the renal function of the donor. Otherwise, they should be healthy. This is preliminary HLA matching is done, which is also known as tissue matching, and preoperative evaluation of the donor done in a routine way with all the investigations, plus renal angiogram to identify the length and number of renal arteries and vein. And finally, cross matching to, that is the antigen antibody reaction 48 hours before surgery, and it should come as negative, not positive, and positive up to 20% also is accepted. Then renal transplantation, continuing with that, recipient evaluated routinely as for any major surgery, to undergo hemodialysis 24 hours prior and serum potassium to be checked before shifting to OT in the recipient. NPO guidelines as per any elective procedure for both donor and recipient, but donor to be hydrated with 1 to 2 liters of normal saline during the period of starvation. Pre-op night sedation for both of them, you can give alprazolam 0.025 milligram. Aspiration prophylaxis for recipient is important, and avoid ranitidine or cimetidine as they are renally excreted, as I told earlier. And you need a twin OT room, operating room with interconnection, so that you can transport the or transfer the graft from one theater to another. There is a donor anesthetic management, routine GA with all precautions for lateral kidney position. So take care of pressure points, stretch points, avoid nerve injury, take care of the eyes, all these things I have not gone into detail for want of time. So abnormal position. So he may require antisalagog because salivation may be more. Whenever you turn a patient from supine to other position, salivation may be more. So patient will require glycopyrrolate as a pre-induction agent to avoid too much of saliva drooling. Adequate hydration to maintain urine output more than 1 ml per hour. Start mannitol 0.25 grams per kg before the surgeon starts pedicle dissection. At the time itself, you will start so that there will be adequate perfusion in the kidney. Avoid hypotension in the donor. Maintain normal ABG. Then graft preservation is done. What warm ischemia time, which I told you, is the time from pedicle clamp weight to cold preservative flushing. Cold ischemia starts from the time of cold preservative flush to anastomosis and reperfusion. So this may be very prolonged in deceased donor, sometimes up to 36 to 48 hours. So the problem is you cannot expect immediate urine output in deceased donor kidneys. So because of the long cold ischemia time, patients may require dialysis postoperatively also until the kidney starts secreting the urine. And preservative fluid composition changes from center to center, but generally used agents are finger lactate at 4 degrees centigrade, to which you add 20 ml of KCl, 30 ml of Thylacard, and papaverine for vasodilatation, dextrose 25%, heparin to prevent clot formation inside. And in the live donor recipient anesthesia management, routine GA with the following modifications. No IV line or BP cuff on the AV limb. Again, I'm pressing that point. And all basic monitors like SpO2, EKG, NIBP, temperature, plus neuromuscular monitor if you have will be good. Aseptic precautions must be followed. And induction agent, propofol is the choice, relaxant, cisatracurium, Saxa if potassium is normal, analgesic, fentanyl, maintenance with controlled ventilation, oxygen, nitrous oxide, ISO first choice, CO next, titrate neostigmine, which we all seen earlier. And recipient anesthesia, fluid restriction to 1 liter before clamp release of normal saline. Avoid potassium containing fluids. Use half NS with cardiac ailment patient. Fluid replacement after anastomosis based on urine output plus 100 ml per hour. Vigilance needed at the time of clamp release, which I told you, sudden hypotension, hyperkalemia, and arrhythmia. Mild hypertension is always preferred in the recipient as transplanted kidney function is pressure and volume dependent and not neurologically maintained. Barrier nursing to be followed in the recipient postoperatively to avoid infection. No unnecessary visitors. And diseased heart beating donor transplant, brain dead patients who are on life support are the donors whose relatives would have given consent for harvestment. Organ harvest requires anesthesia to suppress spinal reflexes so that you cannot just like that cut the body and take the organs. Maintenance of hemodynamic stability is important in the donor. Rule of 100 is to be followed. Systolic pressure of 100 millimeter, urine output 100 ml per hour, PaO2 100 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin 100 grams per liter. So problems like hypotension, arrhythmia, diabetes insipidus, coagulopathy, low urine output due to volume depletion or hypotension all have to be managed. And thyroxine injection also to be given, supplementation, levothyroxine to be given in these patients. And diseased heart beating donor, recipient anesthesia in a diseased heart has the following chances. It is always done as a quasi-emergency. So cadaveric transplantation, we don't call it cadaveric anymore, but it is a quasi-emergency because you do not know when the organ will be available. So the recipient may be in full stomach, may need urgent dialysis to correct the fluid state and solute because he might have had his dialysis may be due next day, but the previous night he may get a call to have that. So there is facility for heparin-free dialysis to prevent the bleeding. And on-table urine output may not happen because I told you because of the large cold ischemia time. So patient may require post-operative dialysis. Hence, preservation of AV fistula function is very, 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 very important. And this is non-beating heart or non-heart beating donor. There are now uh, guidelines for how to get the consent, and that is called the Maastricht classification. Patient may be dead on arrival, unsuccessful resuscitation, awaiting cardiac arrest while in the hospital. So all these things are there. There has been modified, and what are all the organs that you can procure is given in this, and the situation, how is it under control or not uncontrolled, is also given. So based on that, the organs to be procured, the non-heart beating, are the first heart and lungs are taken out, followed by liver, pancreas, small intestine, next both kidneys, and lastly cornea and skin. So this is what I told you about the incompatible blood group and paired exchanges. So you have a donor, you have a recipient, but their matching is not compatible. But the recipient 2 and the donor 2, they're crossly, they're acceptable. So if both the couple agree, then you can exchange the donors for the recipient and do the program. Then incompatible donor after plasmapheresis is also called positive cross-match kidney. As I told you, cross-match to be done 48 hours before, where the antigen antibody reaction is tested. So recipient undergoes plasmapheresis. It is only the treatment for recipient, not the donor. And similar to dialysis, you remove the antibodies from his plasma, which can react with donor proteins and cause rejection. They are also administered small doses of immunoglobulin, and then transplant carried out in the usual way. So this is the first kind of that done by Dr. Samit Choube and Sanjay Kotle. So what is ABO incompatibility? They have successfully done in the patients with incompatible blood group also. Now coming to patients on peritoneal dialysis. Why peritoneal dialysis? Because patients may have congestive cardiac failure or extensive vascular diseases leading to AV fistula failure. The mechanism, peritoneum acts as the membrane to filter the solutes by diffusion, simple diffusion and concentration gradient. That is the mechanism of peritoneal dialysis. 3 to 4 cycles per day have to be done with 2 liters of dialysate fluid. Requires insertion of a plastic indwelling catheter under some form of anesthesia. They are more prone for infection like peritonitis, not as efficient as hemodialysis. That is another one is check the efficacy of PD. If they are coming for renal transplant, check the efficacy of PD by assessing the fluid status, urea, creatinine, electrolyte levels, and of course potassium. PDA dialysate can have hyperglycemia because it contains a lot of dextrose, and insulin should be added to the dialysate to have a precise control. PD catheter may be removed during surgery, and hence facilities for hemodialysis must be kept ready in case the kidney is not working or patient goes in for fluid overload. You cannot depend on PD for removal, so you must have facilities for emergency HD. And all transplants, as for other things, you must have managed sepsis. And find out the emergency surgery, find out the severity of the disease and corrective therapy, assess the efficacy of treatment and fluid status, assess the CVS from history and investigation. If already on hemodialysis, find out the time of last session of hemodialysis, check potassium level and ABG. These are the 2 important things in emergency. Always check for a potassium level and the acid-base balance, metabolic acidosis, wide anion gap will be always present. So follow the same precautions as you do for the other cases. If time permits, optimize by heparin-free HD, if time permits. Otherwise, you have to go ahead and do restrict fluids, full asepsis, and then as early as possible, institute renal replacement therapy at the earliest. Management of post-transplant patient for surgery, assess the graft function by blood parameters and physical examination. Absence of edema, absence of breathlessness, absence of anemia, all these things indicate that the graft is functioning well. And immunosuppressive medication, how much they are taking that, is there any interaction between these drugs and the drug that you are going to use, avoid NSAIDs, and AVF usually closes when the graft is functioning well. So that is one problem. Supposing a patient post-transplant goes in for acute hypotension, then you have to go for emergency dialysis with the IJV catheter because the AV fistula may not be functioning. So strict asepsis practically, and if you are planning for GA with ET intubation, unless you practice asepsis, there is chances of post-operative pneumonia, which is a very, very dangerous complication. So the topics that may be asked related to this is physiology of urine formation. You have to be thorough. Countercurrent exchange and countercurrent multiplication. Structure and functions of the nephron. Endocrine functions of the kidney may be suddenly asked. Pharmacology of diuretics may be asked. Role of kidney in maintenance of hemostasis. This will comprise of hyperkalemia, hyponatremia. About that, you must be very, very confident and you have a clear concept. Preservation of renal function during aortic cross clamping. That may be suddenly asked with this topic. And how to differentiate between acute kidney injury and chronic kidney injury or kidney disease is another chapter. Normally, acute kidney injury patients, because of the severity of the disease, may not be kept in the exam, but in theory, you may have to know all about that. So that will complete the presentation. So thank you very much for the patient listening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, you can close the thing now. I can close that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, it was an excellent coverage of the entire topic, sir. I think all our PGs would have felt as if they have completed 1 month posting in nephrology unit and urology unit.
Any doubts or any questions they have, I can try to clarify whatever I know.
Participants can unmute themselves and ask questions. Do we have any questions from our participants? The presentation was so elegant and precise. So I believe there's no doubt in the minds of our participants, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And I request our Professor Vasanthi Madam and Professor Rajeshri to add some more points to this session, entire
One
session.
thing that's frequently asked in examinations is rifle criteria. RAFLE.
Yeah. I didn't elaborate on that because it is usually such acute patients.
Sir.
Yeah. That's why I finished last. I put it in the related topic. Acute kidney injuries also can be suddenly asked, even though it is an acute condition which will not be kept as an examination case in the viva. You must know everything about that in the practical exam. And
Yes,
it is
sir.
only based on the creatinine and the urine formation. So creatinine rise from the base level, gradually increasing, goes into the various stages. Similarly, urine output starts dropping. These are the two parameters with which you assess that rifle criteria. Okay, that's not a major difficulty to remember that. Okay, so the rifle itself is an acronym for the various things, which finally ends as a. And one more newer point I can add is in acute kidney injury, more than creatinine elevation nowadays, they have found that cystatin C, which is a protease inhibitor, is a better marker of acute kidney injury than your routine creatinine estimation. So if you can estimate cystatin C, which is filtered and then eliminated by the proximal convoluted cells. If kidney function is not normal, as it happens in acute kidney function, the blood level of cystatin C starts accumulating. So if that is a better marker like your troponins for the myocardial infarction, nowadays cystatin C is considered as the best marker for acute kidney injury and not CKD.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, acute dialysis disequilibrium was the thing you mentioned, sir. Can you kindly explain, sir?
Which one?
Acute dialysis disequilibrium.
Dialysis disequilibrium syndrome is one which will happen in some patients with limited cardiac function, where you have to take out at least 300 to 500 ml of blood every minute to use the dialysis machine. And at the same time, they will have to replace the fluid with an IV fluid initially. That situation, the sudden fluid shift causes a serious disrupt the auto regulation of most of the organs, especially the CNS, the cardiac function, and all that will go astray, and patient may become agitated, restless, and may go in for sudden hypotension, muscle cramps. All these things can happen. So you have to be very gradual in those patients in removing the blood, and then supplemental fluid should be given to the volume that you are replacing, so that they settle down with the available volume and then come for stabilize themselves hemodynamically and other system function also. That is what is called dialysis disequilibrium syndrome, which will get adapted over a period of time. It may happen in the initial phases, but it will be slowly. If the cardiac function is good, they will get adapted. But if they have already some compromise with the cardiac function, then this may continue, and those are the patients who have to go for peritoneal dialysis.
Yes, sir. And one more question is the role of vasopressors.
Yes.
There is still doubt about dopamine and
No.
noradrenaline.
Low dose dopamine has not been practiced nowadays. It has become completely obsolete, and people don't recommend at all for this thing. But phenoldopam, the ADH analog, is the one which is now gaining more importance. Okay, so that is recommended in place of the dopamine. So phenoldopam injection, I forgot the dose. I noted it somewhere. I will send it later on. So that is available as an intravenous infusion, which can be given for maintaining the renal perfusion, as well as hemodynamic stability can be achieved with that.
Yes, sir. And one more doubt about the thrombasthenia. Thrombasthenia, platelet dysfunction.
Thrombasthenia, yes. Thrombasthenia can happen in patients with a normal platelet count. In those patients, desmopressin is recommended. So there, you have to do what is called a platelet assay, which to find out its function. Instead of just making a platelet count, you have to do a platelet assay for its function, which is available. And then if you find that platelet function is not adequate, then you have to inject desmopressin, which is a synthetic analog of vasopressin, subcutaneously, 0.3 units.
Per kg body weight.
Yeah. So that is the treatment for thrombasthenia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any more questions from our postgraduates, please? Dr. Sushil Krishnan?
All I have to say is I have never encountered such a comprehensive presentation on renal function. I am consider myself very lucky to have seen this, and that's all I can say. Sir, congratulations, fantastic thing, and we are very fortunate to have such a wonderful presentation. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
It took me
Dr.
almost
Mantha?
four days and nights to prepare this.
Fantastic, sir. Amazing.
Because I don't have any junior help to prepare my slides. I sit on my own and do all these things. So I am a little slow in my PPT making. So it took almost 4 days for me to complete the whole thing. And I have to in between think and make the things precise, because there are any number of presentations available. If you Google and see, SlideShare is there and other presentations, each one having 120 slides, 90 slides, and so many slides. But I wanted to make it as short as possible, because I am a lover of that old textbook, Synopsis of Lee, Anesthesia by Alfred Lee. So we used to take that to the theater during our postgraduate days and revise the topics only with that. There will be only one liner for all the answers will be a single line without much of explanation. So in the exam, that's what you need. You have to swiftly answer. If you say that one line, you will examiner will know that you know that point, and he will go to the next question. So, and I just wanted a similar thing to be presented so that postgraduates can benefit it by going through it quickly before exams. Okay.
Yes, certainly, sir. This is at least for the kidney function. This you have achieved that aim of yours totally. That's all I can say. Thank you so much.
I have. I am preparing for each and every exam topic like that. Already, I have got one for COPD, and in future, God willing, I will be making for all the topics so that I can do some benefit to the students. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Atul Sharma, can you say a few words? Dr. Atul?
I think he is not there.
Thank you very much, sir. Really, it is a very nice presentation, and I have listened such type of presentation after a long time. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now I request our HOD Madam, Dr. Kusma Matai, to thank our professor and encourage our participating postgraduates to learn not only anesthesia, but the attitude towards teaching and preparation, commitment to our anesthesia profession, as well as our fraternity.
Thank you very much, sir. Had a wonderful sessions all these while. And I'm sure this webinars are so useful that we can attend it at any time without.
Yeah. That is the convenience that you are relaxed.
Exactly,
And even if you sleep, nobody will notice. So you can.
And I'm sure we have to keep continuing this, and I'm sure it will be a great help for all our postgraduates and all of the faculty also to keep refreshing and going through the cases again and again. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Authority on renal, and there's no second thing to it, sir.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, for the benefit of all our participants and those postgraduates who have missed this session, we have recorded the presentation by our beloved professor, and I will share the recording with all our participants in our WhatsApp groups.
No, I can send the PPT also if any of the postgraduates are interested. I will send it to one postgraduate, and they can share it among themselves and keep it as a ready reference for them. I don't have any what do you call that? Rights for
Intellectual property rights.
Yeah. I don't claim any revenue also out of it.
Knowledge is to be shared, sir.
Our love and affection and gratitude is your revenue, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. With the permission of the professor and our participants, shall we sign off this meeting, sir?
Yeah, good night. Thank you very much.
Good night, sir. Thank you, all participants. Thank you, sir.